They didn't know what to make of it at first. Hundreds of warships aligned in perfect formation, like a wall of stars blotting out the void, sensors aimed, weapons primed, energy humming through neutron cores hotter than suns. The Galactic Union had sent its finest. 6 species. 2,000 years of military doctrine. And they were ready to crush Earth with clinical efficiency. But Earth didn't send a fleet. They sent him. The command bridge of the Union dreadnought Havoc's will was silent as they watched the lone vessel emerge from the warp rift. No escorts, no swarm. Just a single, dark, matte black cruiser, gliding forward like a whisper in the vacuum. Its profile was unfamiliar. No known schematics, no recognized signature, no heat emissions. Just one word etched across the hull in ancient Terran glyphs. R-A-V-E-N. Admiral Catharn blinked his triple eyelids, confused. "Where's the rest of the human fleet?" Silence. "Answer, damn it!" he barked. The tactical officer hesitated, then muttered, "There is no fleet, Admiral." That's it. Whispers erupted across the bridge. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't pride. It was contempt. The humans weren't coming to fight. They were coming to end something. Alone, with one man aboard. Inside the Raven, he sat in the command seat, silent, calm. Muscular fingers wrapped around the armrest like he was holding back a god. His name was classified. His face hadn't been seen in decades. He didn't wear a uniform, just a torn vest, a faded tattoo on his neck, and a chain around his fist. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The AI spoke for him. "Target acquired. Multiple vessels detected. Shall I initiate combat protocol?" He didn't answer. He just smiled. Back on the Union Bridge, the Admiral tried to calculate the odds again. This had to be a diversion. A decoy. Humanity had to be sending more. They wouldn't just throw a lone ship at a galactic fleet, unless they knew something the rest didn't. And they did. In the inner files of Earth's black site programs, buried so deep even the AI war tribunals feared to touch them, was a protocol marked only as Oblivion Type 0. And the man in the Raven was its only survivor. He wasn't just a pilot. He was a weapon. Catharn's second-in-command panicked. "Admiral, incoming signal. Human frequency dot." "Put it through." A voice crackled through the chamber, dry, gravelly, like gravel under steel. "This isn't a war. This is judgment. You came to take Earth, but Earth already took me. You want a battle? You'll get a lesson." Then the line went dead. The Raven accelerated. No shields, no evasive maneuvers. Just a straight line toward the heart of the Union fleet. And that's when the sensors started to scream. Radiation spikes, energy fluxes that made neutron cores look like candles. The Raven wasn't firing weapons, it was one. The hull began shifting, distorting space around it, tearing at physics like a wild dog. One ship, one man, one decision to defy the most powerful coalition in the galaxy. Admiral Catharn stood frozen as he realized what he was witnessing wasn't bravery. It was madness, or worse, humanity. The Raven didn't slow. It didn't blink under the pressure of 1,000 weapons targeting it. It didn't react to the threat displays lighting up across the Union command bridges like firestorms. It just kept coming, unbothered, unafraid, and completely outside the realm of rational warfare. Inside the control room of Havoc's will, Admiral Catharn stood like a stone idol. The fear in his chest wasn't logical, but it was real. He'd survived the Mantak uprising, held orbit during the Drex incursion, executed over 700 captains for cowardice. And yet now, facing a single ship, he felt something new creeping up his spine. Doubt. The sensors were failing to measure the Raven's interior structure. Its material composition returned readings that shouldn't exist. Not alloys, not energy fields. Something in between, something wrong. "Fire everything," Catharn growled. "Now!" Dozens of capital ships lit up the void like suns in a supernova. Plasma torpedoes, dark matter lances, ionic warheads, wave-based disruptors, all flung toward the Raven in overlapping arcs of destruction. The Raven didn't dodge. It absorbed. The first torpedoes hit with enough force to level a moon, but they vanished on contact, like pebbles tossed into a black hole. No explosion, no reflection. The weapons just ceased to exist. Then the disruptor beams arrived, tuned to molecular destabilization. They struck the Raven's hull and rebounded straight back toward their sources. In seconds, 3 Union destroyers were sliced apart by their own attacks, screaming as power cores ruptured and decks were exposed to the vacuum. No warning, no chance. On board the Raven, the man in the chair tilted his head slightly. Not in surprise, more like curiosity. Like he was waiting to see if the universe had anything better to throw at him. The AI responded with quiet calculation. Enemy aggression pattern. Predictable. Initiating phase 2. "Do it," he said. Just that. Nothing more. The Raven's frame shifted. The outer hull rippled like liquid metal, then hardened into jagged fins, like wings of some long-extinct predator. The ship's silhouette changed, not for function, but for fear. Psychological warfare encoded in the ship's design. Pure human spite made physical. The Union fleet finally recognized the truth. This wasn't a warship. It was a message, one they should have listened to centuries ago. Ships began pulling back. Orders came too late. The Raven opened its maw, literally splitting apart as a gaping void formed between its front prongs. It didn't fire missiles. It sucked. Space itself twisted inward. The gravitational readings went insane. The Raven wasn't launching a weapon. It was becoming one. Admiral Catharn screamed into the comms, "Retreat! Regroup! Do not engage further!" But the front line was already gone. 7 vessels crushed together like tin in a compactor, drawn into the Raven's singularity before it snapped shut again like a hungry beast. And then came the sound. It shouldn't have been possible in vacuum, but the Raven howled. A sound that bypassed audio receptors and lodged straight into the nervous system. Officers fell to their knees, some clawed at their helmets, others just stared, their minds fractured by a sound not meant for sanity. Back on Earth, deep under the Andes, in a chamber colder than death, 3 surviving creators of the Raven watched the live feed. Dr. Albrecht crossed his arms. "It's working." "You call this working?" the woman beside him asked, voice trembling. "We built that thing to prevent extinction, not unleash it." Albrecht didn't look at her. "Humanity doesn't beg, it punishes." On board the Raven, the man reached out and tapped the console. "Initiate Protocol Echo." The AI paused. "Confirmation. Are you sure? This will erase all fallback options." "I don't plan on falling back," he replied. Outside, the Union fleet split into 2. One half tried to maintain formation and counterattack. The other half turned and ran. Cowards, survivors, maybe both. But it didn't matter. The Raven locked onto the nearest dreadnought and launched. No engines, no flames, just motion, raw and unnatural. 1 second it was idle. The next, it was on the hull of the Galaxian Crown, boring through 6 layers of alloy with something no one had ever seen before. Not lasers, not torches, time collapse. The metal rusted in microseconds. Then the Raven injected its payload. A virus made of memory, rewriting the ship's onboard systems with the worst moments of human history. Every screen flickered to images of Earth's bloodiest days: trenches, gas chambers, bombed cities, betrayals, genocides. The alien crew screamed. They couldn't shut it off. Their minds weren't built to process such relentless, naked cruelty. Some tried to kill themselves. Others succeeded. In less than 5 minutes, the Galaxian crown went silent. No weapons fired. Just silence. In the control room of the Union flagship, Catharn was shaking now. "Who is he?" he whispered. What kind of creature? It sends one man against a fleet." The tactical officer looked up, tears in her 3 eyes. "They call him the Echo." The name meant nothing to Catharn, but to humans it was legend, the last survivor of Earth's true warfare age, a soldier who didn't fight for orders or peace or empire, a man who fought because there was no one left who could. The Echo wasn't a hero. He was the debt humanity sent to be paid in blood. Inside the Raven, he sat alone, not smiling anymore, just breathing. Every breath hurt, every pulse a reminder of what he'd sacrificed to become what he was. The nanites in his spine were failing. The psychic barriers were cracking. But it didn't matter. One more ship, one more example. Let them feel it. He pulled a fragment of a photograph from a compartment on his belt. An old, faded picture of a little girl. Blonde curls, toothless smile. Behind her, a crater where a school used to be. That was the day the Union bombed Earth. Not a declaration, not even a warning. Just a test to see if humans could bleed. They could, but they didn't forget. He crushed the photo in his hand, not out of rage, out of focus, resolve. This wasn't about war. This was about memory and vengeance. The Raven spun, choosing a new target, the Union's command vessel. Admiral Catharn's face drained of all color as he watched the black ship come for him. "All ships, stand between us and that thing, stop it." But no one moved. No one dared. The Raven's AI delivered the final message, beamed to every corner of the galaxy. To those who believed humanity was broken, we were. But we rebuilt with scars. You called us lesser, primitive, savage, and we agreed. Pause. But savagery has memory, and we remember everything. The Union lost 11 capital ships that day, and all of its pride. The Raven drifted silently through the wreckage, its pilot slumped in the chair, breathing heavily. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just waited. Because this wasn't over, this was only the beginning. The wreckage drifted like frozen corpses in a void funeral. Burned hulls, twisted metal. Escape pods cracked open like eggs. For all the firepower the Galactic Union had amassed, it hadn't stopped one man. One ship. The Raven floated silently now, like a beast that had eaten its fill and was waiting to see if anyone else wanted to try their luck. No one did. Admiral Catharn's command deck was in shambles. Half the crew was dead or insane. The rest were looking to him for answers he didn't have. It was the kind of silence that only ever existed in defeat. Thick, ugly, humiliating. He leaned over the console, blood dripping from a cut above his eye. What is that ship? The answer didn't come from his officers. It came from an intercepted file. Old, encrypted, long buried in the Union's classified black archives. Someone had unearthed it in the last hour, as panic spread across the fleet like a virus. The file was simple. A single line from a Terran general recorded over a century ago, in the ruins of a long-forgotten battlefield. "If humanity ever sends just one, you should start digging your grave." That wasn't strategy. That was a promise. Across the rest of the fleet, what remained of Union Command debated one last push. Two admirals advocated for regrouping with reinforcements from the Helix Quadrant. Another demanded immediate retreat. But Catharn knew something no one else did. The Raven wasn't attacking them. It was testing them. Back aboard the ship, the Echo sat motionless, his mind drifting in and out. The AI administered auto-stabilizers, micro-shocks to his nervous system to keep him lucid. But the bleeding inside his skull had started again. The nanites weren't regenerating, they were dissolving. He wasn't built to last, he was built to destroy. The AI's voice broke the silence. Vitals dropping. Suggest emergency stasis. No, he whispered. You will not survive another engagement. I'm not here to survive. He closed his eyes and remembered her voice. The girl with the curls. The laugh like spring rain. She'd asked him once, "Why do stars die, Daddy?" He hadn't answered then. Now he knew. So something new could be born. The Raven stirred. It turned slowly, deliberately, toward the last standing line of Union defense. 12 cruisers surrounding the Central Command ship Valis Primarch. Not the biggest, not the fastest, but the symbol. Every victory parade in the last 50 years had flown under that banner. Time to burn it. But as the Raven prepared to move, a new signal pulsed across the void. Different frequency. Not Union. Not Earth. Something else. The Echo's eyes snapped open. I trace that. The screen flickered. An ancient dialect scrolled across the interface, glyphs that hadn't been seen since the first collapse. Pre-Earth. Pre-everything. The AI stuttered. Signal origin unknown. Transmission. Human. He leaned forward. Repeat that. Human. But not Terran. Variant detected. The Raven halted. So did the Union fleet. Then something stepped through. A ship, not made of metal or alloy, but of fractured gravity and frozen time. Its shape bent the mind. To look at it was to feel your memories being rewritten. Inside it, a signal pulsed. A voice, fractured and ancient. You are not alone, Echo. He stood slowly, his body cracking from within. Bones shifted unnaturally. The process was accelerating. His time was measured in heartbeats now. AI, he whispered. What the hell am I looking at? The ship, if it could be called that, responded in kind. Not with words, but with images. A war before records. A faction of humanity that didn't return to Earth. They evolved out there, in silence, in suffering. And now they'd come home. The Echo stared at the apparition in disbelief. They weren't allies. They were judges. The AI confirmed it. Human DNA confirmed. Non-Terran lineage. Likely origin. The Exodus Project. Lost in deep space anomaly 917 years ago. Catharn saw it, too. His sensors barely functioned, but the ripple in space was undeniable. Another one? He whispered. There's another kind of human? The Union commanders panicked. They'd barely survived one. A second kind. Unknown, uncharted, evolved. Wasn't just a complication. It was a nightmare. The strange vessel moved closer to the Raven, not in aggression, in recognition. Two ghosts of humanity. One from Earth, the other from something far older. Inside the Raven, the Echo felt it, in his blood, in his bones. They'd come not to help, but to witness. He connected his neural link to the apparition. Just for a second. Just enough to understand. What he saw made him choke. Thousands of years of survival. Alone, no planets, no home, only ships like that one. Bending physics, enslaving stars, trading their humanity for survival. And they judged Earth soft. The message was clear. Finish what you started. Prove yourself, or we will finish it for you. No alliance, no peace, just challenge. The Echo looked toward the last Union ship, the Vallis Primarch, still alive, still clinging to the hope that someone would come stop this madness. He stood tall now, blood dripping from his jaw. AI, he said. Yes? Prepare to breach the Primarch. You won't make it. I wasn't supposed to. Outside, the Raven roared forward, not sleek, not graceful, just angry. The Primarch fired everything, a storm of terror unleashed in one final plea for survival. The Raven vanished, then reappeared inside the Primarch. Its hull collapsed around it like foil. The Echo tore open his harness and marched through the breach, boots melting deck plating with each step. Flames licked around him, but he didn't burn. The crew of the Primarch opened fire. Bullets, plasma, screams. Didn't matter. He walked through it like a nightmare, a man already half dead, not driven by revenge anymore, but by duty. The final piece of his humanity peeled away as he reached the command deck. Admiral Catharn stood trembling, a pistol aimed but hands shaking. Why? Catharn whispered. Why didn't your people come with a fleet? Why just you? The Echo grabbed the barrel and lowered it slowly. Because a fleet is for winning wars, he said. I came to end one. And with that, the lights went out. The Primarch exploded from the inside, a single burst of light that cracked the sky for 100 light years. From orbit, the second human vessel watched in silence. Then it turned, not toward the Union, not toward Earth, but toward the stars. Its judgment had been passed. The Echo was gone. But his message wasn't. Don't provoke Earth, don't test the broken, and never, never think humanity needs numbers to fight. The debris field of the Union fleet spun endlessly across the void. Where there had once been a symbol of galactic supremacy, now there were only ruins, drifting steel tombs wrapped in silence. The wreckage would circle that sector for 1,000 years, like a warning whispered into the bones of the stars. And at its center, nothing. The Raven was gone. Vaporized with the Vallis Primarch, its pilot never recovered, no black box found. Only speculation remained. Some believed he died in the final explosion. Others claimed he transcended, that the ship and its pilot were absorbed into a quantum fold, something even human science couldn't explain. But the most dangerous rumor, the one whispered in Union corridors and Terran backrooms alike, was that he chose to disappear. That somewhere, he still waited, watching, waiting for another reason to wake the Raven. Back on Earth, deep beneath the frozen remnants of Siberia, the Directorate watched in silence as the final footage of the Primarch's collapse played on loop. Dr. Albrecht stared at the screen with no emotion. He didn't fail, he said. No, murmured a voice beside him, a shadowed figure with half a face made of chrome. He passed, and now we've got another problem. Albrecht turned. The Watchers? Worse, the man said, stepping forward. They're not just watching, they're evaluating. The second human species, the ones from the Exodus Project, hadn't disappeared after the Echo's sacrifice. Their ship, that angular abomination of gravity and light, had retreated just outside Terran space in a position that mocked strategy. Too far to attack, too close to ignore. And they weren't communicating, not with words. They didn't need to. Instead, across Earth's quantum channels, they sent images, brutal, sharp bursts of data that bypassed translation. The first image had shown Earth burning. The second, a fetus growing in a tank of black fluid. The third, a hollow-eyed child tearing through armored soldiers with her bare hands. Each image came with a single message burned into the code. This is what we are. What are you? Earth didn't respond. Because Earth didn't know. The Echo had been their best, their last relic of a forgotten war machine. With him gone, all that remained were the shadows of what once was. The Directorate began Project Revenant in secret, an attempt to recreate the Echo's enhancements, but every test subject died screaming. The genome had rejected the grafts. Neural implants corrupted healthy brains within minutes. The Echo had never been a formula. He had been a freak, a perfect accident of trauma, tech, and time. And now Earth was left with nothing but ghosts. Meanwhile, the Galactic Union splintered. What was left of its leadership declared martial law. Panic rippled across the sectors. Planets that once pledged allegiance began seceding. Civil unrest turned into civil war. No one wanted to admit it, but the truth was loud. One man had shattered the illusion of control. And in backwater bars, low-orbit slums, and prison colonies, the legend began to twist. The Echo became myth, a name that carried weight heavier than any ship. They whispered he was still alive, hiding on the edge of space. Some claimed to have seen the Raven in the corner of warp breaches. Others said they'd been visited in dreams by a voice that told them to prepare. Prepare for what? That answer came in the form of a massacre. Planet designation RX-71, a mining colony on the edge of Union space, a quiet rock, home to barely 3,000 souls. Overnight, every inhabitant was erased. No survivors, no alarms, just a strange mark scorched into the crust, an ancient human glyph twisted into something unfamiliar. Earth received the data dump 3 hours later. The signal came from the Watchers. This time the message was not a question. It was a demand. Send another. Dr. Albrecht stared at the footage of the scorched colony, rage simmering beneath his calm. We have no one left, he muttered. The chrome-faced man responded flatly. Then we make someone. Everyone we tried broke. Then find someone already broken. And so the hunt began. Across the Terran fringes, black ships with no markings started visiting prisons, underground fight rings, deep space labor camps. They weren't looking for soldiers. They were looking for survivors. Men with scars so deep they couldn't feel pain anymore. Men who'd lost everything and still kept breathing. In one such place, a gravity mine used for ore refining, sat a man named Kane. He wasn't special, not anymore. Just another body in a jumpsuit, dragging his chain of labor through crushed rock and electromagnetic storms. But once, long ago, Kane had led the Red Ash campaign on Mars. He'd watched half his unit eaten alive by vacuum spiders. He'd ordered the other half to detonate themselves just to seal a fault line. He'd survived it all, and he'd begged not to. When the black ship came, he didn't ask questions. He just stood up, eyes hollow, and walked aboard. The next 6 months disappeared into needles, surgeries, code floods, and bone reshaping. They broke his mind 100 ways and rebuilt it in one direction: obedience to the mission. But no matter what they did, Kane never spoke. Until the final day, when they showed him the image of the Echo. Bloodied, broken, triumphant. And the message left behind in the Raven's AI core: If another rises, let him know this wasn't vengeance. This was warning. That was the moment Kane opened his mouth and said, "When do I launch?" And Earth breathed again. The new vessel wasn't the Raven. It was uglier, heavier, meaner, named after something the old world had buried deep. The Crucible. Kane was wired into it without ceremony, no send-off, no flag. He didn't care. He didn't need legacy. He just needed one target. And the Watchers were waiting. Their ship drifted just outside the Kuiper fringe, still pulsing with that impossible geometry, like a puzzle that couldn't be solved without going mad. When the Crucible dropped from warp, the stars shivered. Kane didn't speak. He didn't need to. Inside his skull, a whisper had been growing louder each day. Not the scientists, not the AI. Him. The echo. His memories had bled into the neural drive, buried inside the wreckage Earth recovered after the Primarch's fall. They hadn't found the echo's body, but they'd found his mind. Echoes of his rage, his choices, his pain. Now Kane carried that burden. And more than that. He understood it. The Crucible opened a channel to the Watcher ship. No words were exchanged. Just a pulse. Challenge accepted. What followed wasn't war. It was something older. A duel, ship to ship. Man to monster. Legacy to evolution. Kane stared at the Watcher ship like a man who had already buried himself. The Crucible floated beside him, quiet and monstrous, its hull blackened from re-entry simulations and experimental weapon test burns. Nothing on that ship was aesthetic. No grace. Just jagged edges, trauma-coded systems, and a cockpit wrapped in bone mesh designed to sync with his nervous system on a molecular level. He didn't ask what the Watchers wanted. He already knew. They were testing Earth, again, not with armies, but with fate. The Crucible powered up with a growl, not a hum. Its core wasn't clean tech like the Raven had used. It was dirty, built on failed ethics and desperation. A war engine made by men who stopped pretending to be moral. Kane took one breath, one heartbeat, and activated neural sync. Instant agony. The Crucible didn't link like the Raven. It tore its way into him, flooding his veins with dark circuit pulses, grinding bone against alloy, replacing muscle memories with something colder. He didn't scream. He didn't flinch. He belonged to it now. "Status?" came a voice. Mechanical, clipped, soulless. The new AI didn't have the Raven's charm. It wasn't meant to. It was a handler, not a partner. "Functional," Kane growled, his throat already bleeding from the strain. "Feed me the target." The Watcher ship didn't move. It didn't broadcast threats. It simply bled light from every impossible angle. The Crucible's sensors began to rupture. "They're corrupting time around themselves," the AI noted. "Microshifts, temporal interference. It's not just movement. They're fracturing the future." Kane blinked once. "Then we hit them in the now." The Crucible moved. It didn't fly. It didn't glide. It punched through space with every microburn, distorting the black between stars with its mass. As it surged forward, the Watcher vessel responded in kind, folding into itself like a blooming flower made of hate. Then it struck. A single lash of anti-light whipped towards the Crucible, faster than reaction, hotter than hell. It wasn't matter. It was void, compressed into a shape that wanted to unmake anything it touched. Kane jerked his hands, twisted the ship on its axis. The Crucible took the hit. Pain screamed through his spine as part of the portside wing melted, deformed, then grew back. Not metal, not repair, regrowth. The Crucible had flesh. It had nerve. And Kane was inside it. Again, he snarled. The crucible howled. Twin particle drills deployed from its flanks, spinning like fangs. Kane locked onto the ship's central anomaly, whatever passed for its brain, and launched. But the Watcher ship wasn't there anymore. It blinked. That's the only word that fit. One instant it stood, the next it didn't. And the crucible slammed into the void left behind, spinning off course. Inside Kane's head, the AI shouted, "You can't fight something that won't anchor to linear time." Kane gritted his teeth. "Then we unmake time." He reached into the crucible's core systems, something even the Directorate warned him never to do, and pulled. The ship reacted like a wounded beast, screaming, resisting. Kane didn't let go. He pulled deeper, dragging out a buried subroutine. Black pulse. It had never been tested. The Echo hadn't needed it. But Kane wasn't the Echo. He was worse. The crucible expanded, reshaped, groaned as its hull fractured and regenerated in real time. Black pulse launched, not a beam, not a wave. A curse. It tore across the battlefield not in light, but in silence. Every sensor, Union, Terran, even those on ancient hidden satellites, went dark. The Watcher ship convulsed. For the first time, it reacted. The pulse hit its skin and peeled back the camouflage of time. Beneath its shell were not machines. They were human. Or what used to be. Pale, elongated figures trapped in layers of living armor, their eyes gone, their mouths sealed. They hadn't evolved. They'd been mutilated by survival. And now they were angry. The ship retaliated, launching a scream across every channel. Kane staggered in the cockpit as the sound drilled into his skull. It wasn't just noise. It was memory. He saw his dead squadmates on Mars, his wife choking on poison air. The last time he cried, the last time he begged someone to kill him, every shame, every mistake. The Watchers weren't fighting with weapons. They were using grief. The AI's voice cracked, almost human. "They are rewriting your perception. Stop thinking. Let me guide—" Kane shut it out. He didn't need guidance. He needed rage. With a roar, he seized the crucible's override system and manually steered into the heart of the Watcher ship's temporal breach. The edges of reality cracked. Time slowed. Colors inverted. He saw things that never happened, alternate versions of himself burning, fleeing, dying. He chose none. He dove straight in. Collision, implosion. Silence. Then light. The crucible reemerged, dragging part of the Watcher vessel with it, a chunk of its internal architecture bleeding blue mist. Kane slammed it into a containment field. The AI blinked. "What did you just do?" "Ripped out its heart," Kane muttered, barely conscious. He stared at the floating mass. It twitched, pulsing with sickly rhythm. Inside it, a voice whispered. "Software female. We are what you could become." Kane stepped forward, looked at it, smiled without joy. "And you should have stayed lost." Then he purged the chamber with plasma. It screamed once, then died. For real. The Watcher ship folded in on itself like a collapsing star. No retaliation, no explosion. Just silence. Kane stood alone in the cockpit, barely breathing, bleeding from his eyes. But victorious. The AI returned, voice steadier now. "Target eliminated." "No," Kane whispered. "That was a scout." The AI hesitated. "Explain." "I saw what it saw," Kane said. "It wasn't attacking. It was measuring. That wasn't the main fleet. That was the first step." The crucible drifted in space now, Engines offline, leaking mass. Earth's comm link crackled to life. "Pilot Kane, do you copy?" He stared out at the stars, and finally answered, "Yeah, I copy." A pause. Then, "Status?" Kane looked at his reflection in the shattered glass of the cockpit. "I'm ready," he said, "but this isn't over. It hasn't even started." The crucible limped back into Terran space, trailing fractured debris like blood in open water. The ship's structure hissed as atmospheric re-entry triggered emergency cooling vents, steam pouring off its scarred frame. It was a miracle the thing held together at all, or maybe a mistake. No celebration waited for Kane, no cheering crowds, no welcome home, only protocol. He was met by drones first, mechanical swarms scanning every molecule of the crucible, checking for contamination, anomalies, or traces of Watcher tech. Then came the black suits, faceless men who never gave their names, ushering him into a decompression chamber with thick walls and no windows. He stood alone in a jumpsuit that smelled of burnt metal and dried blood. His knuckles were still cracked from gripping the manual override handles. He hadn't slept in 6 days. He didn't ask how long the debrief would take. He didn't care. Dr. Albrecht finally entered, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. "You should be dead," he said. Kane didn't look at him. "You're welcome. We've run simulations, 916 scenarios. None of them had you surviving that encounter. None." "Then your simulations are trash." Albrecht smirked faintly. "You brought back the first physical evidence we've ever had. A piece of their core. Even in ruin, that's a breakthrough." "Call it a souvenir," Kane muttered. There was a long silence between them. Then Albrecht leaned forward, eyes colder than the chamber. "You saw something in there, something you haven't told anyone." Kane said nothing, but the silence was louder than a scream. Albrecht continued, slower now. "We know. We saw the Crucible's neural logs. You accessed something buried inside them. Not just code, not memory, possibility." Kane finally turned his head. His voice was low and hollow. "They're not coming for Earth." Albrecht frowned. "Then what are they coming for?" Kane's jaw clenched. "Me." The air in the room seemed to freeze. "I didn't win that fight," he said. "I passed a test, barely, and now they're coming to claim me." "You're assuming they think you're one of them," Albrecht countered. Kane shook his head. "They don't think I'm one of them. They think I'm the next version." Albrecht stiffened. "A prototype?" "No," Kane whispered. "A replacement." Outside the chamber, sirens wailed. The facility trembled slightly as deep core alarms activated. Not from impact, not from attack, from presence. Orbit control screamed through emergency frequencies. Something was entering Terran space. Not a ship, not a fleet, a signal. And it wasn't coming from outside the solar system. It was already here. Below Antarctica, the Sub-Zero Relay Center detected a frequency that had been dormant since Earth began broadcasting radio. The Watcher signal had embedded itself into Earth's tectonic crust centuries ago, waiting. Now it was waking up. Albrecht and Kane stood in the chamber as red lights bathed everything in shadow. "Get him to Site Black," Albrecht ordered. "Now!" But Kane didn't move. He was staring into space, eyes glazed, lips twitching. Whispers filled his ears. Not from outside. From within. The voice wasn't his. It wasn't the AI. It wasn't even human. It was the Watcher. "We gave you a gift," it said, "and you wore it like a weapon, but you were meant to become." Kane clenched his fists. "I'm not yours." The voice chuckled. "You already were." His veins began to glow faintly, blue light crawling through his skin like frost. Albrecht's eyes widened. "Restrain him!" he shouted. But Kane's body wasn't responding to orders. The crucible had been too effective. The neural link hadn't severed. It had evolved. His physiology was changing. Subtly, slowly, but irreversibly. He wasn't just synced to the crucible anymore. He was it. Albrecht backed away. "We should have let you die out there." Kane looked at him, and his voice was no longer his alone. "You didn't save me. You released me." Then he collapsed. In the hours that followed, Earth went black. Not from war, but from fear. Communications failed across major cities. Satellite systems blinked out. Quantum AI cores stopped responding. The sky filled with static. Power grids failed not from overload, but from refusal. The Watchers weren't coming. They were already inside the system. They'd been watching for decades, waiting for the first true echo. And now that Kane had opened the door, they were ready. But not with armies, with invitations. All across the Earth, people began receiving dreams. Images burned into their subconscious. Black ships, broken stars, voices promising salvation through pain. Some welcomed it, others went mad, and a few understood. They were being recruited. The Watchers weren't an enemy. They were a direction, a path, and Kane was their first step. Underground, Kane awoke inside Site Black, hooked to machines no one fully understood. His eyes glowed blue now, faint but steady. The scientists monitoring him whispered theories none dared publish. But Albrecht stood beside him, watching. Not afraid, but curious. "Do you hear them still?" he asked. Kane nodded slowly. "They're waiting." "For what?" "For me to choose." "And will you?" Kane looked up. His voice was raw, cracked. "I already did." "Then what are they waiting for?" Kane smiled weakly. "To see if you'll try to stop me." Albrecht paused, then nodded. "Then we'd better get to work." They tried to keep it quiet. The directorate buried the footage, sealed the transcripts, erased the feeds. They said Kane was undergoing stabilization, said the crucible had corrupted his neural stem, that he was in stasis for protection. But everyone knew. The rumors spread faster than any virus ever had. Whispers that Kane had survived the impossible, that he wasn't a soldier anymore, that he wasn't human anymore, and that somewhere in the dark, something had claimed him. The world fractured overnight, not from an invasion, but from faith. There were those who believed Kane was the next evolution, the answer to survival. In the slums of Mars and the broken cities of Europa, they painted murals of him, Kane with hollow eyes, arms outstretched, crowned in flames. They called him the Carrier. Others called him the last mistake. Governments fell into silence. Some militaries defected outright, offering allegiance to something they couldn't see, couldn't explain. Others locked down their borders, terrified that whatever Kane had brought back was contagious. And it was. Not physically, but philosophically. Kane had become a question. And the only ones willing to answer it were the ones who feared nothing anymore. Back inside Site Black, Albrecht watched him through layers of glass and lead. Kane wasn't restrained. He didn't need to be. He sat still for days, eyes closed, lips barely moving, talking to them. When he finally opened his eyes, Albrecht was waiting. "Can you still hear me?" the scientist asked. Kane nodded. Yes. Do you still know who you are? Kane tilted his head. I know who I was. And now? I'm becoming. Albrecht exhaled. Then I need to know what you're becoming. Kane stood slowly. The room dimmed as he moved, sensors malfunctioning, radiation levels spiking. What we feared, he said. What we buried. But what we need. They'll never accept that, Albrecht said. They already have, Kane replied. The others, the ones dreaming. Albrecht stiffened. You've made contact? Kane nodded. They're not soldiers, they're seeds. You planted them long ago by trying to end war instead of understanding it. Albrecht turned away. We didn't want this. We wanted survival. Kane stepped closer to the glass. Then stop pretending you were innocent. The lights flickered. Across Earth, riots began. It started in the equatorial sectors, where the air domes were oldest and the security thinnest. Workers refused to operate the orbital arrays. AI assistants shut down without explanation. Then came the firebombings, the blackouts, the screams. And everywhere the symbol appeared, a circle of ash with a vertical line through the center, the Watcher mark. Humanity was splitting, not by country or class, but by belief. Some wanted to fight, to find another echo, to burn every remnant of Watcher tech and erase the Crucible from history. Others wanted to surrender, not out of weakness, but reverence. They didn't want to resist the Watchers. They wanted to join them. Back in Sight Black, Albrecht made a choice. He opened Kane's door, not out of trust, out of necessity. We can't control this anymore, he said. Kane stepped forward, his body humming with low frequencies. Then don't. Help us. Help Earth survive what's coming. Kane stared at him with eyes that no longer held humanity. Only if Earth understands, survival means change. Albrecht nodded once. Then we'll change. Meanwhile, far above the planet, something woke up. A satellite abandoned decades ago, forgotten after the Venus Ark War, suddenly lit its thrusters and adjusted orbit. The AI inside it, thought dead, began broadcasting. Not to Earth, but into deep space. Coordinates, a message. The words weren't in any known language, but the Watchers heard them and responded. They didn't send ships, they sent him. No name, no identity, just a shape. He arrived in orbit without propulsion. A humanoid, naked, hovering 20 miles above Earth. His skin was white as bone, his eyes black pits of memory. And when Terran defense systems targeted him, he smiled. They opened fire, railguns, orbital lasers, kinetic spears. Every shot passed through him, not because he was intangible, because he was not now. He phased between moments, always just before the impact, just after, never during. Then he descended. Kane felt him before the alarms screamed. In his mind, in his marrow, something said, "Brother." Albrecht watched Kane stop mid-sentence, eyes going wide. "What is it?" Kane didn't answer. He ran, tore through the underground corridors with speed the cameras couldn't track. He reached the elevator shaft, leapt up it bare-handed, punching through 3 layers of armor before surfacing in the upper city. And there he was, hovering above the towers, watching, waiting. Kane stepped into the light, and the sky turned black. The two locked eyes. No words, no war cry, just understanding. This was it. The other echo, the one the Watchers made. Their answer to Earth's challenge. Kane didn't hesitate. He launched, and the sky cracked. The sky shattered. Not in the poetic sense, not metaphor. The upper atmosphere cracked under pressure from forces no one had words for. Sound disappeared. Light twisted. Cities below fell silent as the air turned heavy, as if the planet itself held its breath. Kane and the Watcher-born Echo met mid-air. No weapons, no fleets, no commands, just fists. Their first strike bent the skyline. Windows exploded. Satellites veered off orbit. Two bodies colliding with more force than Earth's deepest gravity wells. Kane's body convulsed as he absorbed the impact, his spine rippling with nanite repair streams. But he held. The other Echo, paler, smoother, perfect in shape, barely flinched. He floated backward with unnatural grace, tilting his head like an artist studying an unfinished sculpture. "You're not complete," the Watcher Echo said, his voice layered with 1,000 whispers. "I'm enough," Kane growled. They clashed again. This time Kane led with rage, a punch through time, a scream of will, a lunge backed by the weight of Earth's history. The Crucible's residual code flared in his veins, superheating his bloodstream, distorting the air around his limbs. He didn't just hit, he ruptured physics. The Watcher Echo blinked out of sync, phasing for a split second. Too late. Kane's fist connected with his ribcage, and the sky screamed. The impact rippled across continents. Tides shifted. Mountains trembled. Below, people stared into the sky, some weeping, some praying, many doing both. They didn't know who to root for, or if they even should, because both of them looked like gods. And both of them wanted the other dead. The Watcher Echo countered with elegance, hands slicing through air, bending space like fabric. He didn't punch. He rewrote. Each movement bent Kane's probabilities, split-second distortions that turned certainty into maybes. But Kane had already stopped believing in odds. He fought like Earth itself, dirty, resilient, primal. They fell. From orbit to ocean, they plummeted like comets. Their impact into the Atlantic sent walls of water tearing into the coasts of 4 continents. Kane roared underwater, body burning with Crucible's final protocol, reactor phase core. Self-ignite. Albrecht had warned him never to use it, because it didn't just destroy Kane, it destroyed everything nearby. But Kane didn't care. He wasn't just fighting for Earth anymore, he was fighting for the right to stay human. Under the crushing weight of the ocean, he wrapped his arms around the Watcher Echo's neck and activated phase core. The explosion wasn't light. It was absence, a pulse of erasure that tore a sphere out of the ocean, exposing bedrock before gravity and water reclaimed it. Ships were tossed like toys. Storms birthed in every direction. And when the smoke cleared, Kane floated above the crater, alone, bleeding, breathing, but not broken. The Watcher Echo emerged moments later, body fractured, leaking blue mist from his eyes and mouth, but smiling. "You're close," he said. "To what?" Kane spat. "To us!" Kane launched again, howling. They collided mid-air over the smoking Atlantic, a ballet of death, not smooth, not choreographed, brutal, messy, desperate. Kane broke his ribs, then his arm, then his back. But he kept fighting, and when the Watcher Echo finally faltered, just for a moment, Kane struck true. A punch to the chest, straight into his core, straight into memory. Kane didn't see light. He saw truth. Visions flooded his mind, Earth's forgotten wars, ancient human colonies lost to time, the Exodus Project screaming into darkness as they reshaped themselves into monsters just to endure. They didn't become Watchers out of choice, they had to. and now they'd returned to offer salvation. But only to those who bent. Kane came back to himself with a scream, fists buried in his enemy's chest. The Watcher Echo wheezed. "We are the cure!" Kane leaned close. "Then I'd rather be sick," and tore out his core. The sky detonated. No noise, just pressure, just change. The Watcher Echo imploded, folding inward, vanishing in a scream of code and dust. Gone. Real gone. Kane collapsed into the ocean. He didn't float. He sank. 3 days later, Sight Black was abandoned, the Crucible irreparable, but Kane was alive. Barely. His body was recovered by scavenger ships, smuggled to underground labs, revived by medical tech they weren't even cleared to see, much less use. And when he woke, Earth had changed. Not politically, philosophically. There were still nations, still factions. But now everyone knew. There were others out there. Not just aliens, not just threats, but reflections. And they were watching, waiting, to see if Earth would bend or rise. Albrecht sat beside Kane's recovery pod, aged and broken, coughing blood into a rag. "They'll be back," he whispered. Kane nodded. "Let them. They'll send more, smarter, stronger, maybe not even human anymore." Kane looked up. "Neither am I." Albrecht chuckled. "You always were. That's why you won." "No," Kane said. "I didn't win." "Then what did you do?" Kane closed his eyes. "I reminded them that we're still here." The lights dimmed. Far above Earth, in the empty dark, a signal pulsed. Faint. Rhythmic. A heartbeat. And across the galaxy, ships paused. Eyes opened. And somewhere, deep in the abyss, another voice whispered, "Humanity has chosen its weapon. Let's see if they're ready to use it." They built a monument, not to Kane, not to the war, but to the moment. A black shard, 300 meters tall, rising from the heart of the Atlantic crater, where two beings collided and tore the sky open. It was made from the fragments of the Crucible, welded by heat from the reactor core that almost killed the planet. The monument didn't have a plaque. It didn't need one. Everyone knew what it meant. This far, no further. They called the site the Divide, because it marked the split, not just between two men or between Earth and the Watchers, but between what humanity was and what it was willing to become. Years passed. The Earth didn't burn. But it didn't rest either. Something had shifted. The stars weren't silent anymore. The galaxy watched Earth the way you watch a wounded predator. Carefully, respectfully, and never too close. Kane was never seen again. Rumors said he died weeks after the final battle, his body unable to hold the Crucible's changes. Others said he ascended, literally disappeared into the sky, leaving nothing behind but static and melted concrete. Some believed he was buried in a secret tomb beneath the Divide. Others said he was the monument, fused into the obsidian core, his mind still awake, still listening. The truth? No one knew. But his effect remained. Across the world, children grew up in Kane's shadow. They studied what he did, what he fought, and what he refused to become. And from those teachings came a new age, not one of peace, but of preparedness. The Watcher Protocol became law on every continent, every power grid, every AI, every planetary defense system carried fail-safes against non-linear attacks. Humanity didn't rebuild its fleets, it rebuilt its mindset. No longer expansionist, no longer naive, Just ready. In the outer colonies, they still whispered of watchers in the dark, strange shapes seen near mining moons, dreams of the black symbol that woke people screaming. A girl on Europa drew pictures of a white-eyed man before she'd ever seen a screen. A laborer on Ganymede swore he saw a shadow flicker between seconds. But the Watchers never returned. Not openly, not yet. Because Cain had set a precedent. He'd shown them that even after all their evolution, all their time-bending and future-seeing, they still feared something. A human who refused to die quietly. Albrecht died 2 years after Cain vanished. He left behind one message, encrypted and buried in Earth's deepest AI core. It read, "I don't know if Cain saved us. I don't know if the Watchers were enemies or warnings. All I know is we built monsters to face monsters, and the man we made chose to remain human. That was the only victory we ever needed." That message is now required reading in all interstellar training academies. They don't teach his tactics. They teach his choice. The choice to fight, even when logic said to surrender. The choice to bleed, even when offered godhood. The choice to remain Earth's son, even when the stars offered something more. The Watchers never sent another envoy. No fleets, no envoys, just silence. And that silence? That was enough. It meant Earth wasn't forgotten. It meant Earth was respected, or feared, or both. On the 10th anniversary of the Divide, a boy stood before the monument with his father. He looked up at the towering shard and asked, "Was he real?" The man, scarred, silent, simply nodded. "Yes." "Did he win?" The man thought about it. "No," he said quietly, "but he made sure we didn't lose." The boy didn't understand. Not yet. But he would. Because the lesson Cain left behind wasn't in war or power. It was in defiance. In the whisper every human now carried in their blood, "You can break us. You can bend us. But you will never own us." And across the black sea of stars, the Watchers heard it, and listened, and waited, because Earth hadn't finished its story. It had just finished its first chapter.